Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a really long time since I've uploaded anything. Don't mind my dog who's just joining me in the video. This video is going to be completely different than what I've uploaded before. It's not going to be makeup related. It's going to be my IVF success story. I've gotten a lot of questions regarding my journey. Well, our journey, mine and not my husband's journey. Because a lot of people just don't understand or really know what IVF is. And it's hard to explain, but it's not hard to explain at the same time. So get ready to be watching for a while. Grab a snack, grab something to drink, because this is going to be kind of a long story. All right, so let's start from the beginning. Me and Nata met each other when I was 19, he was 17. So we've been together for a really long time. 2007. We got married in 2012. So between 2007 and 2012, we had decided, and this is maybe TMI, not to use protection at all, about maybe two years into our relationship. And we never got pregnant, but we always said, like, if we did, it was fine. We didn't care. We'd make it work. We'd figure it out. We were young, but we knew we wanted to be young parents. We knew we wanted to have a family, stuff like that. And didn't happen. So we get married in 2012. And I mean, back then I'm happy it didn't happen because we were young, didn't have anything, our life wasn't put together at all. Like, it was a mess. But anyways, we had stopped using protection back then. So I guess that kind of gives a timeline of how long it's been so that we hadn't used protection and hadn't gotten pregnant. So 2012 comes around, we get married, still not using protection, still not getting pregnant, didn't think anything of it. I guess we just thought we were lucky. Don't know what we were thinking. We just didn't think anything of it. And then in about 2013, we started talking about us not getting pregnant, and how that's when we started to realize, okay, this is really weird that we've never gotten pregnant, and it's been years of not necessarily trying, but not trying to get pregnant. So come 2014, we decided that we were going to go to my OB and see if there was an issue. At first we thought it was me because I have really, really bad periods where it's super painful and like really excruciating when the time comes to where, like, I've called into work and stuff. So somebody has suggested, one of my friends who was a nurse at the time suggested maybe I have endometriosis, which can cause infertility. So I went to my OB and I explained to her that we really wanted to get pregnant and we need to figure out what the issue is, because it's been years of unprotected sex and nothing's ever happened. So they gave us a list and they're like, okay, these are all the tests that you need to do. Mainly the person who needed to do most of the tests were me, and he had to do one where they do his semen analysis, and then one of the tests where they put some dye into my tubes that will check to see if my fallopian tubes were blocked, and that would be like an indicator of maybe endometriosis. They took some blood work, they did some other stuff with me, and everything came back clear. Like, it wasn't me at all. I didn't have endometriosis. I didn't have anything. So we're like, okay, well then what's the problem? And then it was his time to take his test, the semen analysis, and he had a feeling it was going to come back and it was going to be him. I kept saying, in my head I was like, no, it can't be him. Like, it's got to be something simple. It should be fine. Kind of find out it was him. Don't mind my dog. So it came back that he had low sperm count. Normally a guy has like millions of billions, I think, I don't know, a really, 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 really high number of sperms, and he wasn't close to that at all. So he had to go see an urologist, I think is what it's called for men. And they determined that he had a varicose vein, I think it's what it's called, that was, it was overgrown, and it heated up and it would like kill off his sperm. Like, basically his body was killing off his sperm. So, I'm sorry guys, I'm like really hot. Pregnancy hormones. Whew. Okay. So don't mind me. So they decided on a surgery that would somewhat correct this vein to stop it from killing off the sperm. We did the surgery. They said give it 3 months because, you need sperm needs to reproduce and stuff like that. And that's about a 3-month process. So we waited 3 months, and it went from, I think, a count of like 800,000 to like 1.4 or something, which is, in the doctor's opinion, 1 out of like a 10-year chance that we could get pregnant from those numbers. So I was like 25 at the time. He was 23, maybe 24, and we wanted to get the ball rolling because we wanted to be somewhat young parents, and we knew that this process was going to take a while. So we figured, let's do it now. Do what we got to do whatever the next step is. So we're not like in our 40s trying to do this. So we decided on the next step, which was called an IUI. So that is where they take his sperm, and when I'm supposed to be ovulating, and they monitor me throughout like my period, like I'll get my period. I was taking some meds on a certain day of my period, and it was supposed to trigger me to ovulate with a shot after I take the pills. I could take the pills so that my eggs were maturing and like growing and stuff like that. And then they would monitor with ultrasounds, and then when they see that there was an egg ready to go, they would make me take a shot called a trigger shot. I would take it at a certain time, and then within 24 hours, I was in the office. He would do his thing. They would take his sperm, and then they would use a catheter and stuff and inject the sperm into my uterus and hope for the sperms to go either way into, hopefully more into the fallopian tube where the egg is actually releasing itself, and that it would basically do the rest of the process it needs to do, like a natural pregnancy. So we did that, and we did about 4 of those. None of them worked. So when we got to the 4th one, they told us that they weren't going to do any more because it's not working, even though Nata has started doing like a diet, like a strict diet of like vitamins and food and stuff like that was helping increase the sperm count, which it was doing a great job. Like even the doctors were like, how are you getting your sperm count so high in such a short amount of time? But it still wasn't high enough to get me pregnant. So after that, they told us our next and probably only option was IVF. And here in Wisconsin, it's about $20,000, and not that I can't afford $20,000, but we were determined to do it and determined to be parents. So we decided to ask his mother if we could move in with her for a little while so we could try to save up for an IVF. Because we also had a lot of other bills that were coming up from like our past that was like messing with our finances, that we for sure knew if with the new finances and bills, we were not going to be able to live on our own, pay rent, pay all of these bills, and also try for IVF. Like it just wasn't possible. So we asked his mom if we can move in with her for a short amount of time just so we can start saving up. And she did. She let us stay with her. And while this was all going on, when did we do this? So at this point, this is 2017. Yes. So, and we decided this in the summer of 2017, closer to the fall, winter. And that's when we were like, okay, we're going to ask her, we're going to move, blah, blah, blah. So we moved into her house in November of 2017. And that's when I started YouTubing a lot, like success stories for IVF, failure stories of IVF, just a whole bunch of videos that pertain to IVF, because I wanted to learn as much as possible about IVF before we did this. So I'm watching this video on YouTube, and this is while we were living, I don't remember, was this while we were, yes, this is while we were living with his mom. Like we had just moved in November. And this video was from this girl who was, cause let me backtrack a little bit. And the month of April is the month of infertility awareness. So she had made a video in April to bring awareness to infertility. So I was watching it, and as I was watching it, I could see clips of stuff that looked like Milwaukee, where we live. And she had like a Marquette shirt on with her husband, and Marquette is a college here. So I'm like, are these people from Milwaukee? Because if they are, I'm going to reach out to them because they had a successful IVF story. So I reached out and I was like, hey, I like commented on her video, and asked her, hey, are you from Milwaukee? And she said she was. And I was like, oh my God, like, I'm from Milwaukee. How crazy it is, like the connections you can make on YouTube. So we started talking, and she connected me with a group here in Milwaukee that meet up once or twice a month at a local hospital called Freighter. And they, you know, just talk about the struggles of IVF, whether it's male or female issues, it doesn't matter. Like, it still affects both of you guys. So, but this is just like a female, all female group. So my husband couldn't go. So I went and I talked with her and this other girl. After that meeting, she directed me to their Facebook group, like their private group. So she added me to the group, and from there, like, I was reading comments and stuff, looking at other people that are on there and their stories, and I came across a comment about an infertility group in New York called CNY Fertility. And they were talking about how cheap their IVF services are. They work with people outside of New York State, like anywhere they'll work with you, as long as you're able to, you know, find places that will allow you to do ultrasounds and blood work and stuff that's required during the IVF process. So I was like, okay, let me take a look at this place. So I looked it up, and it's in Albany, New York, also Syracuse and Buffalo, New York. There's 3 different locations. Their services compared to Wisconsin, it was like $3,900 for a cycle, and on top, but that's separate from like medication prices and then traveling expenses. So I discussed this one out, and I was like, hey, we should try this out, because it's probably gonna be way cheaper to do this than to stay here in Wisconsin and do it. And because we're living with your mom, we could come up with this money relatively quickly. And he was like, okay, go for it. Like, let's find it out. Let's find out the information. So we found out the information. And of course, it was way cheaper. We had a consultation in, like, I called in November or October trying to get a consultation as soon as possible. The only earliest available one was in January. So we called them, we had the consultation in January, explained the situation, and they want to make sure that you've gone through all the possible steps before, like, that have to do with IVF, or that have to do with infertility first before you get to IVF, which we had. We did the IUIs, we did the surgery, we did medications, like, we did everything, and it didn't work. So they're like, okay, you guys are perfect candidates for IVF. So they explained to us, like, because it had been, I think, 2 years since I've had any of the tests that was required in the beginning of the process, I had to do it again. So I wanted to do the IVF in February, but because I had to do the test, which required me to have a period first, I had to wait to do it till March, or at least start the process in March. So we did all that. I don't know why this time when I did all these tests, it was so painful. The first time it wasn't. Like, it was tolerable. It was a little painful, but it was tolerable. This time, I felt like somebody was ripping my insides out. I don't know why. It was crazy. But anyways, I got past that. Everything came back fine. Well, because I was in so much pain during one of the tests, it didn't come out 100% like conclusive. So they're like, okay, you might have this one condition that we need you to do an MRI for. And I don't remember what the name was. It's a really long medical term. I don't know. So I did that. I did the MRI. Everything came back fine. And I think it was just weird because of the reaction I had to the last test with the dye that I had. Was it the dye? I don't know. No, it was like a probing test, like something they had to use, like, you know, those little... Women know what I'm talking about. The little stick that goes in you, and it, like, I don't know, whatever. It was some kind of test like that. So they concluded everything was fine. In the end, everything was fine. So they're like, okay, we can proceed. They gave me a list of all the medication that I needed to take. This list was intimidating. I am terrified of shots, and this required a lot of those. In the process of IVF, the women physically go through hell, like hell, emotionally, physically, hormonally, horrible. So the men, they're fine. Like, they just have to deal with us because of the hormones that are being injected into us. All they have to do is provide their specimen. So we get the list, and they say, okay, we're gonna do it with your next period, which for me came like the end of March or the beginning or middle of March. I can't remember. Or was it April? Honestly, I don't know, because this was in 2018, beginning of 2018. I don't remember. So much has happened since then. It's hard to remember. But with my March period, we were going to do the IVF. So we ordered the meds, and that came out to a total of like $2,500. So that was a lot. But I kind of had an idea that that was what the price is going to be because of everything I've seen, all the research I've done with IVF, and all the like Facebook groups that I had at that point gotten into for CNY patients and stuff like that, and everything they've told us. They told me through IVF. So then we book our flights according to when my period came. We also, like, at the time booked a Airbnb because I didn't know how long I was going to be there for, because again, everything is done to me. Not that only had to be there to provide the specimen, but of course he was going to be there too because I had to have surgery and I was going to need somebody to help me after the surgery. So that's what he was there for, as long as he was. So now we're at the point in the story where we're in New York. Okay. This is what IVF pertains. You get there. Okay. You've been taking these hormone shots for 2 weeks, I think, at this point. And the hormone shots are for you to produce as many eggs as possible from the female. So they're all like, before I left for New York, my OB knew we were doing IVF and they were so helpful. They're like, we'll do the blood work, we'll do the ultrasounds that are required for IVF. There needs to be ultrasounds done to count how many follicles I have to work with when I'm taking the medicines. And also they need to take my blood work to like, what is it for? Just for, levels of certain things. I forget exactly what. So, to check like that I haven't ovulated and stuff like that. So they had did an ultrasound and blood work, and then the rest of the time, they did it like right before I left, and then the rest of the time I went to New York to do it. So just be monitored there before my surgery. When I get to New York, we're still doing shots and stuff, and these shots, again, make your eggs grow. Make multiple eggs grow, not just one, because every woman produces 1 egg a month and drops it. Not every woman. Normal women who don't have infertility issues. I didn't have infertility issues, but they wanted as many eggs as possible. So the medicine that they gave me, 1, prevents me from ovulating, and 2, just makes all the eggs from the follicles that are there grow. So every time they did an ultrasound, which was like every 2 days, they could be a day, then no testing, then a day, then no testing, then a day. And every time they would see how much bigger the follicles have gotten, and they have to measure them. And once the follicles have gotten to a certain measurement, that's when they schedule your retrieval surgery. If it gets past a certain size, they can't do it anymore because the eggs are not mature anymore. So I think it was about a week of me being there before they were like, okay, your ovaries are ready to be harvested, basically. And at this point, my ovaries felt like golf balls. Like, it felt so heavy. I was so uncomfortable because, like, okay, your ovaries are usually like maybe, I don't know, maybe like this big. We'll just use this as an example, like this big. They get to be like this big inside of you. Like, that's like the type of growth we're talking. So they scheduled the appointment for me to have the surgery. You go in that day for surgery, and not that has to be there because he has to provide his specimen at the same time that I'm under. This is a very minor surgery. Like, you're literally only under for like 15, 20 minutes. But I've never been put under for anything before, so I was terrified. But it really was nothing. It's like I don't even remember falling asleep. I just remember waking up and it was done. So they take like a needle and they go through, like they put you under, they open you up, whatever. Then they go through the uterine wall and use like this like needle / like suction thing and take out all the eggs that you've been growing. out. So after that was done, literally 15-20 minutes just so they can get those eggs out, they tell you how many eggs they collected. For me, I got 10, which is a good number because there is a thing called OHSS, which is like ovarian hypertension, like overstimulation or something. I don't know, something like that, where like you're too stimulated and you're in terrible pain. But I wasn't. I had got 10. It was a good number. And I instantly asked them, like, are they mature? Because if they're not mature, the sperm, when they try to put the sperm and the egg together, it's not going to fertilize. They're like, we won't know until they look at the eggs and you know, try to put the sperm together and stuff. I was like, okay. So we had to wait a day. I go home, or I go to our Airbnb, and not that takes me back, and I go straight to sleep because, you know, you're under anesthesia, you just had a little minor surgery. It's tiring, it's a little painful, it's cramping, like you had your period, it's exhausting. So I went to sleep, and then I think it was the next day we got the report of how everything looked. They told us they had put his sperm and our eggs together in a pastry dish, and they let the sperm do its thing, like they, you know, to go to the egg like it would naturally if you did this naturally. But instead it was in a petri dish, and they're in like an environment such as like the uterus, or such as like the fallopian tubes, whatever, however the reproductive thing works, that's the environment they put them in. So then they take the sperm, like just floats around and goes into whatever eggs they attach themselves to that are, you know, mature. So they had told us that they did that. And I think I remember them saying 4 had fertilized, and that, crap, why can't I remember this? I guess because it was so long ago and it was like such a horrible time that I just chose not to remember as much. But I do remember it not being as many numbers of eggs being fertilized as I had hoped. I believe it was 6 of them that had been fertilized, that had attached and were starting to grow. So they decided to give us a next day report to see if the ones that fertilized had started to grow and divide into cells. And that is considered now an embryo. It's no longer just an egg and a sperm. It's an embryo. And this is kind of what they look like. I don't know if you can see that. This is the baby that's actually growing in me now, but this is what an embryo looks like. So they called us on our 3-day report, and they said that 4 of them had fully fertilized. We're now embryos and we're healthy and had cells. So we had 4 little baby embryos waiting to be put back in me so they can grow in the environment they're supposed to grow in. So they decided that we would do a 3-day embryo transfer. You can go from it could be a 3-day, 5-day, 6-day, 7-day embryo transfer. And when I say like 5, 6, 7, it's because that's how long they allow the embryos to grow. And with CNY, if you don't have more than 6 embryos, they will not allow them to continue to grow further out in fear of them arresting, i.e. die. So they decided at our 3-day that I would come in and they would transfer the embryos. I had decided to do a fresh embryo transfer versus a frozen embryo transfer, which is, instead of them freezing the embryos and waiting for my next period to come and go, I was going to do it right away. CNY had warned me that there's a less success rate in fresh embryo transfers versus frozen embryo transfers because your uterus, your ovaries, that whole system is overstimulated from all the meds that you have and still recovering from the surgery and all the trauma I just went through. But because I was stubborn and I was also already in New York, I'm from a whole other state, it would just be easier to just do the fresh transfer, pray that it would work. Because I mean, it's not like it doesn't work. It's just a lesser success rate. So I decided, no, we're going to do the fresh transfer. Like, my body's not the one that's the issue. Like, it should be fine. So we did it, and we decided out of 4, we were going to put back 2 just to have a higher chance of at least 1 attaching to my uterus. So they take the embryos and they put it in like a little catheter tube thing, stick it past my cervix, and then like push the embryos into the uterus. And they like take a picture on the screen of, and it's like a little flash, a little light, that shows that the embryos were put into the uterus. And once that's done, that's when the waiting process starts. Like you have a 2-week wait, well, more like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks of waiting to see if it worked. So I stayed in New York a little longer, like a couple of days, because I still had to get blood work done. I did acupuncture, which they said helps. So I stayed there a couple more days longer than Natha did. He ended up having to go back to work. So he came back to Wisconsin by himself, and I went back home by myself. We're back home. Like I came back home, and I think I had been gone a total of 2 weeks, maybe a little more than 2 weeks. I had felt like I was pregnant, but I've never been pregnant before, so I wasn't 100% sure. So I kind of kept it to myself. I didn't take any pregnancy test whatsoever, because during that time you can tell if you're pregnant with a pregnancy test if your HCG level, which is a hormonal level that goes up as when you become pregnant, and the longer you go in your pregnancy, the higher the number gets, which they don't really monitor in a normal pregnancy, but in IVF it's a huge deal, and is something that is monitored all the time because it determines whether or not your pregnancy is viable or not. A normal pregnancy, for someone who doesn't have infertility, doesn't know that because they don't get tested for that. So when I would like explain this part to like any of my family members or friends who have had kids, are like, what is the HCG? Again, that's a level that they test to determine like if your pregnancy is viable or not. And that is actually the hormone that is detected in a pregnancy test. Nobody really knows that. They just, they just get a positive pregnancy, but that's the HCG level is what's providing that positive. And once it gets to a certain number, that's when it starts popping up in a pregnancy test. So I didn't take the test. Me and Natha had decided we're just wait for the blood work to determine what our levels are. So it came down to the pregnancy or the blood work test to determine if I was pregnant, and it had came back positive. So of course that literally was the happiest day of mine and Natha's entire life. Like I don't think I've ever felt that happiness ever. Not on my wedding day, not with anything. That was legit pure happiness that I've ever felt. So, we told people we were pregnant because a lot of people knew we had went to New York. Like everybody knew what we were doing. So everyone was waiting for that yes or no. So we told everybody yes, we were pregnant, stuff like that. And when you take that blood test, they want you to come back in 2 days because every 48 to 72 hours, that hormone level doubles or triples depending on how long you wait to take the test again. So they wanted us to come in 2 days to make sure that my levels are rising accordingly. If it is, then they're considering that a viable pregnancy. If it is not, then there's something possibly wrong and it's not viable. So of course I'm like, everything's fine. Like I didn't think anything was going to be wrong, like whatever. So that, I think it was a Friday that I had the second test, and my levels did not double at all. I think it went from like a 74 to like 80 something, or like 91. Yeah, it went from 74 to 91. That didn't double at all. So they had told me to be prepared for the worst because this probably isn't a viable pregnancy. Instantly, I was devastated and crushed. And I was just like, what are we going to do? Like, I can't believe I'm losing this baby. Like, I was so sad. I had never experienced that happiness before. And then to just have it snatched away so fast was heartbreaking. Me and Natha cried like the whole weekend. We didn't really talk to anybody. We didn't know what to do. All we kept thinking was maybe it's, it's a slow riser. Like we were just trying to be really hopeful because I had the test on Monday. And so we were just waiting out the weekend. Come the test on Monday, I took it and the numbers had dropped, which confirmed that the pregnancy wasn't viable. So that was literally the worst news I could have ever gotten, because when you've been doing this for so long, for so many years, just praying and praying you become pregnant while watching your friends constantly just popping out kids like it's nothing, it's hard. It's really emotionally hard. It's the hardest thing anybody can go through, and it changes you as a person. And that's a whole other story. Like, the way it changes you as a person is insane. Like, you become a whole other person, because it's such an emotional roller coaster. And if you don't have a good support system or people who really, really support you, you're gonna lose those friends. I'm telling you that right now. Unless they really support you, you're gonna lose people in your life, because it can destroy you, hence destroying some of your relationships because of the person you become because of this. So that's a different story. So they told us that we need to stop the medications that help support the pregnancy after you receive a positive pregnancy. Because when you become pregnant through IVF, your body thinks it's a foreign object because it didn't naturally create this child. The medications that you're supposed to continue to take are medication that basically produces the hormones that your body would produce naturally if your body created the baby itself. But because it didn't, it doesn't create these hormones like progesterone and other hormones that you're supposed to produce naturally to keep the baby and to allow your body to know there's a baby there. So I had to stop taking the medicine, and they said that within a couple days, maybe a week, I would get my period and that would be it. Well, that didn't quite happen with us. I think a day or two after I stopped taking the medication, I was still having this sharp pain in my lower abdomen. Like, it was really sharp, and it was in an area where I was thinking in my head, because I've read so many stories about what could go wrong in IVF, and ectopic pregnancies was one of them. An ectopic pregnancy, well, I'll explain that in a second. So I had a feeling that that's what had happened. So I told Nata, I was like, we need to go to the hospital because an ectopic pregnancy is not good. Like, it could kill you if you don't catch it early enough. So we go to the hospital, and I explained the situation, explained how we did IVF, explained the pain that I was having. And they're like, hey, well, let's do an ultrasound. So they do an ultrasound, and it was confirmed that I indeed had an ectopic pregnancy. The baby one of the embryos had lodged itself in my right fallopian tube. That's what an ectopic pregnancy is. When the embryo / baby implants itself outside of the uterus where it's supposed to naturally implant itself and grow. If it implants itself in the uterus and continues to grow in the uterus, or I'm sorry, the fallopian tube. If it implants itself in the fallopian tube and continues to grow, it could rupture your fallopian tube and you can bleed internally and die. When I went to the ER, they told me that yes, you have an ectopic pregnancy, but the embryo has stopped growing. It was there, very, very, very small, and they can see it in the ultrasound, but it has stopped growing. So that allowed for the option of either going in and doing a DNC where they remove the embryo, but could possibly cause damage to my fallopian tube, which would then make me also an issue for infertility. Or they can give me a shot. I think it was called methotrexate or something like that. And it's a very strong shot medication that they use on cancer patients to kill growing bad cells. So I opted for the shot because I didn't want to risk my fallopian tube being damaged. But with the shot, they told us we were unable to try again with the IVF. Because remember, we still have 2 more embryos because we had 4 in total. We couldn't try again for 3 months because that's how long it takes for the medicine to exit your system. And if we did do another embryo, my body would kill it off because it has that medication that kills growing cells. That hurt a lot because I wanted to try again right away because I'm impatient and because I just wanted to be a mother so bad that I wanted to try again. But we couldn't. We had to wait. So I did the shot. And that was the most painful experience of my life. It tore my uterus apart. They told us it's going to be extremely painful. You're going to be in extreme pain for the next couple days. You're going to bleed a lot. Basically get my period, and it was going to be excruciating. And it was. I was in so much pain. I couldn't go to work. I was like in the fetal position in my bed, crying my eyes out. And on top of it, it was Mother's Day, like Mother's Day weekend. So on top of me going through all this pain, I had to deal with the emotions of losing my baby on the weekend of Mother's Day week, like the weekend of Mother's Day. It was just a really, really, really hard time. Emotionally, physically, everything. Like I was so depressed. You could tell, like, not that he hides his feelings a little more than I do. I'm a little more emotional, but you can see that he was hurt, but he was still trying to make me feel better, even though he was hurting inside. Sorry. I'm just thinking about it. And it was a really hard time. I didn't think I was going to cry while doing this. Okay. So anyways, that happened. Okay. So we lost the babies. We had to wait. We were still living in his mom's house, and we had decided we're going to do it in July. So we were saving up money again. And, all right, sorry. I had to like get myself together before I continue the story. So we decided we were going to do it in July. And, you know, at that point, then it would be a frozen transfer. My body would have recovered from all the meds I had taken before. Like I wouldn't have been on meds anymore. Like it'd be a couple months before, or it'd be a couple months that I had a break from all the medicine. The reason why, well, they kind of explained like why maybe the ectopic pregnancy happened was because, again, it was a fresh transfer. My uterus and all that was still recovering. So maybe like the spazzing of the uterus pushed the embryo further up than it needed to go and ended up in the fallopian tube. So in the end, I do blame myself because I pushed for a fresh transfer and look what happened. So we set the date for July. Then some stuff happened within the 3 months that required us to move out. I'm not even going to get into that story because it just angers me. But basically we had to move out, and so that pushed out our date to do another IVF cycle a couple more months out. We moved out in August, and we decided we were going to get our stuff together in the new place. Like we had $1,000 saved up, which was enough to get us to New York, do the transfer, and come back. So we did that. September came. We're like, we're going to do this in September. Like, let's get our stuff together in August. Like, let's get the house prepped and everything. And then September we'll go do it and come back. So we did. So September 13th of 2018, which I have to say 2018 was by far the worst and the best year of my life. So September 13th, decided the whole week that we're there, because we only had to be there a couple days for a transfer. I didn't have to have surgery, didn't have to do none of that. We just had to start some kind of medication a couple days beforehand and continue it. That again are making the hormones that your body would naturally produce during pregnancy. But because it's not a natural pregnancy, we have to create those hormones ourselves with the medication. That's all I had to do. It wasn't like surgery, wasn't anything crazy. Like my body was ready. So come September 13th was my transfer. We only did one because, again, we only have 2 left. So we have 2 options of having kids, or 2 chances of having kids, not options, 2 chances to have kids. So we did the transfer on September 13th. That was a Thursday. And that Thursday night, well, not Thursday night, Friday morning, like early in the morning, I woke up to a crazy intense sharp pain. Like it was just a sharp pain, but it was kind of quick and lasted like maybe a couple of seconds and then it was gone. And in my head, I got really excited because I've read so many stories or heard from so many people from, again, Facebook pages that that's what they felt when their embryos implanted. So I got really excited, but didn't say anything because I didn't want to jinx it, because I also felt that sharp pain when I had the ectopic, but it had implanted in the wrong place. So I told Nath at this time, I'm not waiting for the blood work. I am going to test when it's the right day to test where it will actually be detected. He didn't like that idea, but I had followed his request to not test last time. And this time I said, I'm testing. I don't care. I cannot wait. It was too much before for me to wait. I'm not doing it this time. So I think we came home and it had to be maybe like 6 or 7 days. So like a week after the embryo transfer. And I took a test at like 3 in the morning. I don't know why I decided to take it at 3 in the morning. I just woke up, had to pee. And I was like, I have a pregnancy test. I'm taking it. So I took it. And I wasn't expecting to see anything because I knew it was still kind of early. With a 3-day embryo transfer, because the embryo is only 3 days old, like when it was frozen, they say you can detect the slightest, like faintest line on a pregnancy test, like after 6 or 7 days or later. So I wasn't really getting my hopes up. I wasn't thinking like, okay, it's going to be positive or I'm going to be able to see it. I knew if I didn't see anything, not to freak out because it might still be too early. But at the time, it had been about a week and I was feeling like I did when we first got pregnant. I was like, I feel like I'm pregnant, but that's how I felt last time. And look what happened. So I wasn't getting my hopes up, but I kind of was getting my hopes up. So I took the pregnancy test and I saw the faintest little line, like the test. I have it here. Okay. These tests. I took a lot of them, so don't judge me. The tests that have like the 2 pink lines, okay? I saw the faintest line. Faintest. So light that I thought I was imagining it, okay? But I got so excited that I saw something that I was like, I have to tell Nata. Like, I woke him up and everything. And I was like, babe, there's a line there. Like, there's a second line. I swear to you. So he looks at it and I look at it. Mind you, this is in a different lighting. Like, I looked at it in the bathroom, which is a little bit brighter than the lighting in our room. Didn't see the line. I'm like, okay, maybe I did imagine it. Like, maybe I wanted so bad I imagined that line being there. So I'm like, oh, all right, well, I'm sorry to wake you up. Like, go back to bed. So he leaves for work and he was even like, why are you testing? You know, like he was mad, whatever. I didn't even care. I was like, I'm going to test whether you like it or not. So he leaves for work. He works at that time he was working at 5 in the morning. Now he works at 6 in the morning, but whatever. So he leaves. I wait for him to leave because I don't want him seeing how crazy I am. And I look at that test because I like, in my head, I'm like, I know I'm not crazy. I know I see this line. I saw that line. So I look at the test again, and sure enough, there's a line. I'm like, why didn't I see that when we put but I was using my phone flashlight, and that's when I saw the line. I guess the lighting in my room like threw off because of how faint it was, that line. So I text him and I call him and I'm like, I'm not crazy. There's a line here. And he was like, okay, well, you know, that's great. Like if there's a line, that's great. That means we're pregnant. But again, what happened last time, we had to be a little like cautious, optimistically cautious. So I was like, okay. And if your levels are rising, when you take those tests, like as faint as that line is, it'll start to get darker as the days go on. So I decided to test every day because I wanted to see if the line was getting darker. And sure enough, the lines were getting darker. So I was really excited. I was like, okay, we're pregnant, for sure pregnant. But let's see, like when the test comes, blood work, what the numbers are like. So I was hoping for a number above 100 because that's more of a strong, viable pregnancy versus ones that are like under 100. But as I've known, like I know now that frozen embryos can rise a little slower, like the levels. So when we got our blood work back, it was, I think, 88. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for letting us know. We just now need to wait to see if it doubles, because that's what really matters. So we took the test again, and it had doubled, exactly doubled. So me and Nathan were so excited, like, oh my God, the numbers are rising like the way they're supposed to be, and they're doctors are congratulating us, like, you're doing great, let's take one more test. And if that number it had doubled or tripled from there, then we'll schedule an ultrasound. That Monday or Tuesday we took the test. Oh no, it was a Monday, and they told us that our levels had tripled or whatever. It had went to the number it was supposed to at that time, so it was a viable pregnancy. We were so happy, like, but because of our loss, when you have loss, you kind of have like PTSD, because you're like afraid something horrible is gonna happen. Because of course, in a natural pregnancy, you can still miscarry, like even if it's a natural pregnancy. IVF doesn't exempt you from miscarriages, so of course I'm thinking the worst is gonna happen to me, because it happened to me before. But I still try to stay positive, and so we went for the ultrasound. And when you're pregnant naturally, you don't get these ultrasounds. These ultrasounds are super early. Like, you don't see a heartbeat right away. You'll see like what's called a yolk sac, and like a fetal pole in like the very first ultrasound, which I think we had at 5 weeks and some days. Mind you, in natural pregnancy, you probably won't have an ultrasound till you're like 8 weeks, maybe a little further along, depending on when you find out you're pregnant. So with IVF, you're more fortunate enough to be able to see your baby grow literally from the beginning, up until you're discharged from your IVF clinic and just submitted to and then you're like with your OB/GYN, and then they go off of like a normal pregnancy schedule for ultrasounds and testing and stuff. So we went for our 5 week, which is where they determine, they do the ultrasound, vaginal ultrasound, and they figure out where the embryo implanted to make sure it isn't ectopic, because an ectopic could continue to rise too. It might just not rise, like the levels will rise normally if it's ectopic, but it could, and then it could be disastrous. But anyway, so we did the ultrasound to make sure the embryo had implanted where it needed to, and it had implanted in the uterus where it's supposed to, and it had a yolk sac, which is a good sign. So we're like, okay, it's a little early. We'll come back for another ultrasound in a week. Then that's when we saw the heartbeat. It had been 6 weeks and some days, and that was the first time we saw his heartbeat. The best moment of my life by far. So that was exciting. And then we went again for a 7 week, and I think that was maybe the last ultrasound we had, and he had grown. He was like a little bean. They're like, everything looks great, like my blood levels were rising accordingly, and like everything was great. And so my clinic had decided to discharge me earlier than I was hoping, but they discharged us at 7 weeks, and ever since then we've been doing great. We found out it was a boy via a gender reveal, which was fun. And I'm now 6.5 months pregnant with a little baby boy, and he has passed all his tests with flying colors. He's strong, he's healthy, and I literally couldn't be happier and more excited in my life for anything. This is literally 2019 is going to be the best year of my life. I'm excited to see Nathan become a dad, because he's already amazing to me. Because IVF is physically draining, emotionally draining, but especially physically draining for the woman, hormonally, everything. Like, I haven't felt like my true self in a long time due to medications and stuff like that, and that's fine. I'm okay with it. Like, whatever I have to do to get my son, or hopefully my future daughter with the last embryo we have, I will do. But yeah, so that is our story. I hope that I answered questions that people are always asking, such as like, what is IVF, and what was the issue, and what is an embryo, and all this other stuff. And yeah, so that's the gist of it. I try to have other people, like our OB, like my OB office, they're amazing, amazing. And they've helped us through this entire journey. With ultrasounds and blood work, never made it hard for us. And I've heard people have a lot of difficulties with trying to get that stuff done. And I've given them information of CNY, and a lot of that place is just blown up because of how reasonable the prices are. And even with the traveling and costs and expenses and stuff, it still comes out cheaper than if you do it locally. But yeah, so that is our IVF story. I hope that it's, I don't want to say helpful for anybody who was watching this and is who is going through IVF, and hopefully they get, you know, some kind of inspiration or hope from this, that even though we have gone through hell and back, there is a successful ending. There's a baby on the way, and we couldn't be more excited. So for anybody who's watching this, who is going through IVF, just know that through all the storms, all the trials, tribulations that you have to go through, there's always going to be that rainbow, and that is our son, and it will be yours as well with your future son or daughter. So yeah, I hope this was informative. I hope that this helps somebody, like a YouTube video had helped me, because if it wasn't for a YouTube video back when, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So hope you enjoyed. I will be doing more videos pregnancy related, because right now that's my life. Before I was doing makeup, and that's not really where I am right now. I still love makeup, don't get me wrong, but that's not my life right now. My life is my pregnancy, and I want to share that with you. So I will be doing a nursery tour when it's finally completed, and I will be doing a what's in my hospital bag video. I love those videos. Like, I'll watch them, and it's very helpful, very useful, and I've learned a lot from all these videos from pregnant women. So yeah, I'm going to show you my belly, and then I'm going to sign off. So this is my belly at 6.5 months. A boy and his dog. All right, so again, thanks for watching, and talk to you soon. Bye.